Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
The thinking atheist. It's not a person. It's a symbol. An idea.
The population of atheists in this country is going through the roof.
Rejecting faith. Pursuing knowledge. Challenging the sacred.
If I tell the truth, it's because I tell the truth. Not because I put my hand on a book and made a wish.
And working together for a more rational world.
Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way.
Assume nothing. Question everything. And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Podcast. Hosted by Seth Andrews.
Just you and me today. I'm not going to take calls. We'll do that on the next broadcast. I wanted to offer an opinion and then sound off all you want in the comments section because I do welcome your input, but so much of what we have been seeing relates to Orwell and his writings in Animal Farm and, of course, 1984. And you know how much I love to read the words of other people. Those who are smarter and more astute than myself, I stand on their shoulders. And as a narrator, I get a chance to sort of bring that information to you. And I'm going to do some Orwell here at the beginning and at the end. And in the middle, I want to give an opinion. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I have an opinion about this fiasco with the White House press corps. And we'll get into the specifics of what has happened if by chance you have been in a deep coma. Or maybe you've just been doing other things because you can't bear to watch anymore. Of course, Orwell's 1984 talks about how the government has become a propaganda machine, rewriting history, fashioning the news of the day, and altering our future so that everybody essentially lines up like drones and dear leader is never challenged. So, of course, 1984 is being referred to by a lot of us these days. And in Chapter 5, Part 1, the section here starts like this. It says, "Just the man I was looking for," said a voice at Winston's back. And of course, Winston is the protagonist of 1984. He turned around. It was his friend Simi, who worked in the research department. Perhaps friend was not exactly the right word. You did not have friends nowadays. You had comrades. But there were some comrades whose society was pleasanter than that of others. Simi was a philologist, a specialist in Newspeak, capital N, N-E-W, Newspeak. Indeed, he was one of the enormous team of experts now engaged in compiling the 11th edition of the Newspeak dictionary. "How is the dictionary getting on?" said Winston, raising his voice to overcome the noise. "Slowly," said Simi. "I'm on the adjectives. It's fascinating." "The 11th edition is the definitive edition," he said. "We're getting the language into its final shape, the shape it's going to have when nobody speaks anything else. When we've finished with it, people like you will have to learn it all over again. You think, I dare say, that our chief job is inventing new words, but not a bit of it. We're destroying words, scores of them, hundreds of them every day. We're cutting the language down to the bone. The 11th edition won't contain a single word that will become obsolete before the year 2050. It's a beautiful thing, the destruction of words. Of course, the great wastage is in the verbs and adjectives, but there are hundreds of nouns that can be got rid of as well. It isn't only synonyms, there are also antonyms. After all, what justification is there for a word which is simply the opposite of some other word? A word contains its opposite in itself. Take good, for instance. If you have a word like good, what need is there for a word like bad? Ungood will do just as well. Better, because it's an exact opposite, which the other is not. Or again, if you want a stronger version of good, what sense is there in having a whole string of vague, useless words like excellent and splendid and all the rest of them? Plus good covers the meaning, or double plus good if you want something stronger still. Of course, we use those forms already, but in the final version of Newspeak, there'll be nothing else. In the end, the whole notion of goodness and badness will be covered by only 6 words. In reality, only 1 word. Don't you see the beauty of that, Winston? It was BB's idea originally, of course, he added as an afterthought. A sort of vapid eagerness flitted across Winston's face at the mention of Big Brother. Nevertheless, Simi immediately detected a certain lack of enthusiasm. "You haven't a real appreciation of Newspeak, Winston," he said almost sadly. "Even when you write it, you're still thinking in old speak. I've read some of those pieces that you write in the Times occasionally. They're good enough, but they're translations. In your ear, you'd prefer to stick to old speak with all its vagueness and its useless shades of meaning. You don't grasp the beauty of the destruction of words. Do you know that Newspeak is the only language in the world whose vocabulary gets smaller every year?" Winston did know that, of course. He smiled sympathetically, he hoped, not trusting himself to speak. Simi bit off another fragment of dark-colored bread, chewed it briefly, and went on. "Don't you see that the whole aim of Newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible, because there will be no words in which to express it. Every concept that can ever be needed will be expressed by exactly 1 word, with its meaning rigidly defined and all its subsidiary meanings rubbed out and forgotten. Already in the 11th edition, we're not far from that point, but the process will still be continuing long after you and I are dead. Every year, fewer and fewer words, and the range of consciousness always a little smaller. Even now, of course, there's no reason or excuse for committing thought crime. It's merely a question of self-discipline, reality control. But in the end, there won't be any need even for that. The revolution will be complete when the language is perfect. Newspeak is ingsoc. And by the way, ingsoc is shorthand for English socialism, the totalitarian political ideology of the superstate. ingsoc is characterized by the absolute control of the party over every aspect of life, surveillance, manipulation of history, psychological control, etc. Back to the excerpt from George Orwell. Newspeak is ingsoc, and ingsoc is Newspeak, he added with a sort of mystical satisfaction. Has it ever occurred to you, Winston, that by the year 2050, at the very latest, not a single human being will be alive who could understand such a conversation as we are having now? By 2050, earlier probably, all real knowledge of old speak will have disappeared. The whole literature of the past will have been destroyed. Chaucer, Shakespeare, Milton, Byron, they'll exist only in Newspeak versions, not merely changed into something different, but actually changed into something contradictory of what they used to be. Even the literature of the party will change. Even the slogans will change. How could you have a slogan like "freedom is slavery" when the concept of freedom has been abolished? The whole climate of thought will be different. In fact, there will be no thought as we understand it now. Orthodoxy means not a thing, not needing to think. Orthodoxy is unconsciousness. One of these days, thought Winston with sudden deep conviction, Simi will be vaporized. He is too intelligent. He sees too clearly and speaks too plainly. The party does not like such people. One day he will disappear. It is written in his face. So that's from Chapter 5 of 1984, up there with Robert Greene Ingersoll as George Orwell as far as quotability. And we've seen so much to quote. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. The most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history. But if thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought. If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. Until they have become conscious, they will never rebel. And until after they have rebelled, they cannot become conscious. This excerpt from 1984. Now I will tell you the answer to my question. It is this: the party seeks power entirely for its own sake. We are not interested in the good of others. We are interested solely in power, pure power. What pure power means, you will understand presently. We are different from the oligarchies of the past in that we know what we are doing. All the others, even those who resembled ourselves, were cowards and hypocrites. The German Nazis and the Russian communists came very close to us in their methods, but they never had the courage to recognize their own motives. They pretended, perhaps they even believed, that they had seized power unwillingly and for a limited time, and that just around the corner there lay a paradise where human beings would be free and equal. We are not like that. We know that no one ever seizes power with the intention of relinquishing it. Power is not a means, it is an end. One does not establish a dictatorship in order to safeguard a revolution. One makes the revolution in order to establish the dictatorship. The object of persecution is persecution. The object of torture is torture. The object of power is power. Now you begin to understand me. Now, because I don't want to interrupt my thought, my offering of opinion, let me take my short break right here and then come back and talk about the big dramatic press corps walkout of 2025. Hang on. I just saw a YouGov poll that released that was talking about the No Kings protest from October 18th. The poll was also published in The Economist just a few days ago. Now, the original estimates for the No Kings protest had about 7 million people in the United States and elsewhere marching the streets. That's a big number, 7 million people in thousands of cities. But actually, according to the new YouGov poll, triple that number participated. Triple. 8% of U.S. adults, around 20 million people, participated and rallied and marched. It's remarkable. According to the same poll, by a slight margin, more Americans approve than disapprove of those protests. 2/3 believe that it was a peaceful endeavor. That's still a terrifying number, right? 2/3 of Americans say it was peaceful. That's a low estimate. 6% of Americans say that day was defined by violence. What? I mean, a lot of U.S. states did mobilize the National Guard in anticipation of violence because the propagandists at the White House were doing what INGSOC does, what Big Brother does. They were, quote, getting the language into its final shape, the shape it's going to have when nobody speaks anything else. And what was the narrative? What were the warnings? These aren't free protesters expressing concern because they love their country. It's Antifa. It's domestic terrorists. They hate America. Makes no difference what actually happened. The facts do not matter. As Orwell also wrote in 1984, he said, the party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. Which brings me to the big press corps walkout of just a few weeks ago. Let me set it up for you. The White House press corps is a group of journalists, correspondents, and media representatives, and they meet at the Pentagon in D.C. to cover the president and the goings-on at the White House and briefings by the press secretary. The press corps itself was started back over 100 years ago. Now, I find the White House press briefings pretty tedious because with every administration, to varying degrees, the press secretary is just a spin doctor. Never, ever, not once have I seen a press secretary who was pressed on a hard question, looking at the reporter and going, you know what, that's a good point. And I may be wrong on that, or we screwed that up, or this was a mistake, but you know what, it's time to fix it and course correct, and we're going to do better next time. Thank you for challenging me on that score. Does that happen? I've never seen it happen. Instead, when pressed, reporters hear a slick litany of prepared talking points. So I think, are there a couple of useful things about these press conferences? It's interesting to see which reporters actually do journalism, which ones are asking challenging questions and pushing back, and which ones are asking smart queries, and which ones are asking stupid stuff or acting just like sycophants. So that has been useful to a degree. And I've also found a little bit of utility in watching just how the press secretary reacts when challenged. Do they answer the question? Do they dodge? Do they lie outright? And this, of course, brings us to our current press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, who is not a liar. The word liar is far too charitable. Carolyn Leavitt is a psychopath, a straight-up transactional, enabling, self-serving, Trump boot-licking ghoul whose press conferences are so Orwellian. I'm honestly surprised that the press corps didn't walk out a long time ago. Carolyn Leavitt. Now, she got into politics. She lost a congressional race 3 years ago. She lost to a Democrat. She faced accusations of illegal campaign donations, and then she went to work for Trump's super PAC, the political action committee that is called, and I am not kidding, Trump's super PAC named MAGA Inc. Her face was featured on a Project 2025 training video for, the Christian nationalist takeover of the nation. And she, of course, became Trump's press secretary during his campaign before being named to the White House in November of 2024. Now, I want to get into the walkout. Trump and his minions, of course, do not like to be challenged, countered, or presented with pesky language that is not Newspeak. And so the White House made a demand. They said, sign our statement, a contract really, an agreement guaranteeing that you will only have a more restricted access to our people and sources, and you will only do so when given an official escort. Oh, and you will not be allowed to report any news without official approval from the White House. The Trump presidency wants to manage and massage info coming from what it calls a, quote, disruptive press. And so we want reporters to sign on the dotted line, and we want you to guarantee to us you will only report what we approve. Holy shnikes. Rather than agree to this, which, essentially they would have become just propagandists. You're told what the news is by INGSOC. Dozens of press corps reporters said, screw this, and they turned in their badges, walking out of the Pentagon. And you can see the photos and the video of the press, and the big walkout is very dramatic. October 15th, 40 to 50, I think maybe 60 journalists walking out of the Pentagon with boxes of their stuff. And even Fox News joined the walkout. Fox News? Wow, how bad do you have to be to lose Fox News? Dear Leader State Television, right? The walkout itself was news for about 6 minutes until the country just shrugged and moved on to the next crazy thing. But of course, we're doing 2025 Orwell here, so we have to ask, why the censoring and propagandizing of important information? This is the people's information. Why is it being shut down, if not because the Ministry of Truth has been installed instead of a government by and for the people? So this has been the adult portion of the conversation on the broadcast, but now we begin Romper Room, because the Pentagon The Pentagon has named a new press corps to replace the old press corps. And it is so terrifyingly right-wing batshit that I cannot even come up with a punchline. Check out these journalists, like the Gateway Pundit. Now, the Gateway Pundit is a far-right disinformation mill that was once blasted by the Harvard Journal of Law and Technology for essentially being a hub of conspiracy theories and outright bullshit. It is an anti-vax publication, anti-COVID science, election denial. It cannot even get the identities of America's mass shooters right before it publishes the wrong names of innocent people and gets those people named and blamed. It's crazy. Then comes the post-millennial. This is a media outlet out of Canada. They've got a mixed track record, but still leaning right and failing a whole lot of fact checks before they publish their stories. Also, part of Newspeak is the conservative news site Human Events. Now, Human Events magazine has been muddling along for years until, ta-da, it now has a front row seat in Trumpistan. Back in the day, according to the man himself, it was Ronald Reagan's favorite magazine, and it published pieces by nightmare human beings like Phyllis Schlafly and Ann Coulter. Sean Hannity has been in it. Current magazine anchors include Brett Hamachek. This is a guy who was an advisor for Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA, and Jack Posobiec. He is a conspiracy nutbar who once pushed the Pizzagate thing. You remember Pizzagate? It was a QAnon claim that there were Democrat blood-drinking child traffickers who were operating out of the basement of a Washington, D.C. pizza parlor, which had no basement. That's the kind of journalist he is. There's also an actual Turning Point USA affiliate called Frontlines. Influencer Tim Pool, he's another righty, and a Substack newsletter called Washington Reporter. And here is my favorite new addition to the White House press pool, Lindell TV, founded by the My Pillow guy, Mike Lindell. Oh yeah. This guy is a piece of work. Self-professing, Bible-thumping evangelical Christian and wackadoodle conspiracy theorist. But he has a PhD. He has a doctorate, honorary doctorate from Liberty University. Liberty University, the Christian college which was founded by moral majority leader and bigot and general cultural pain in the ass Jerry Falwell Sr. Oh yes, it was Liberty that gave Lindell his honorary doctorate. And this guy, Mike Lindell, is nuts. He's crazy. He might be a grifter, con, tragically ignorant. I mean, I untethered to reality. He lives in a bubble, but I genuinely think this man's hard drive is skipping. There is a glitch in his matrix. Mike Lindell founded My Pillow about 20 years ago when he grew it into a somewhat profitable business. Problem is, there were a lot of customer complaints at the time. The quality sucks. A whole lot of retailers, like Bed Bath & Beyond, said, there's not a lot of demand for this stuff. So the retailers took My Pillows off their shelves, and the business really started to tank when Lindell came out for Trump. He was a huge Trump supporter in 2016. He called Trump 1.0 a divine appointment. He was praised by the great Donald for his business acumen, and he used a lot of his money to fund far-right political candidates. Most tragically, Mike Lindell began to speak words. The nonsense which emitted from the orifice under his nose is pretty remarkable. He recommended for COVID, to treat COVID-19, he recommended a substance that is toxic to the heart. Am I saying this right? Oleandrin? Oleandrin. This is dangerous to the heart. He said it's a COVID treatment. He, of course, pounded the election fraud drum. He was at the January 6th rally, wasn't at the riot, wasn't part of the break-in the domestic terrorism at the Capitol, but he was at the rally, on One America News Network, OANN, which, by the way, is also part of the new press corps. He bought 3 hours to air a documentary, and I'm using that word in the loosest sense, documentary about how the election was stolen. This movie was so crazy, so bad, so full of lies that even OANN fronted the broadcast with a big disclaimer. So now, well, we're going to air this, but please don't sue us, Smartmatic and Dominion, because, we're just airing it. By the way, the Raspberry Awards, which is the opposite of the Oscars, the Raspberries gave this film, called Absolute Proof, its award for the worst picture of the year. And Mike Lindell's erratic behavior and crazy theories and just toxic behaviors have reportedly gotten him millions of dollars into debt. He's been going public and saying how financially devastated he is. I'm sure this is all, those woke, lib, domestic terrorist, Antifa, frog costume wearing, America hating rebels who are responsible for his decline. But he's just off the rails. His media outlet, Lindell TV, is among the new elite as parts of the approved White House press corps. And finally, after all of this, here is the point, maybe the obvious point that I have been coming to all along. The press corps walkout and the hardline right-wingers who are replacing real journalists, all of it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Not really. Because everything, Carolyn Leavitt, Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, Stephen Miller, Mike Johnson, etc., everything these people have said and done has almost always been better reported from outside the press corps room. Having that Pentagon press badge accomplished mostly one thing. The media got fed bullshit from a few feet away instead of seeing it from a few miles away. I swear to you, that's the only difference. Are you in the room or out of the room, as Big Brother Bullhorn's Newspeak to the commoners? Leavitt doesn't answer questions. She either doesn't know the answer, so she attacks the journalist, or she gives intentionally false answers and then attacks the journalist. Every freaking week, this woman claimed there were real officials with necessary expertise at Doge, not a bunch of hackers that Elon Musk brought in to probably backdoor our social security numbers and who knows what other private information and not really saving us any money at all. She said, no, there are real people with true expertise. When asked who that person was, she refused to answer. Tanking stocks, soaring grocery prices prompted Carolyn Leavitt to say, "Great news, the economy is starting to roar." That's a direct quote. She said that tariffs were actually tax cuts on Americans. She claimed the big, beautiful bill is not a drain on the debt, when in fact it adds about $4 trillion to the debt in about 10 years. She blamed Democrats when key Trump people shared classified information about military attacks on Signal, the public messenger app. She said it's the Democrats who were making this a big deal and no war plans were actually discussed, when in fact it was all right there in black and white. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. She has said the Democratic Party, now this is a party in this country made up of 44 million people, including me, possibly you. The Democratic Party's main constituency, according to Carolyn Leavitt, is Hamas terrorists, illegal aliens, and violent criminals. Well, I meet a lot of liberal, progressive Democrats type people in my travels, and I'm not seeing the pro-Hamas T-shirts. I'm not seeing those demonstrations. Illegal aliens, I may have met some undocumented people along the way. And the vast majority I've met are are often natural-born residents here. Violent criminals? I mean, how violent are they? They're doing community service. They're running food banks. They're manning booths at public events, having conversations about religion, secular values, the secular constitution, humanism. How dare they, those violent domestic terrorists? Many people say she's just a troll, or she's gaslighting, or she just doesn't give a shit. I think she's a psychopath. She is a straight up psych. She is totally uninterested in what is true or what is moral. She has no empathy center. And for that reason, she fits right in to the big brother model that you and I are facing today. If questions are dodged and the answers are worthless anyway, how valuable is, how much do we really need or want a White House press corps? 50 or 60 people staging a walkout and getting replaced. This is going to have almost zero impact on how the journalists were reporting in the first place, or how seriously we take the Newspeak that is vomiting out of the administration's motor mouths. And I do fantasize that at some point, even Fox News, right? Fox News, part of the walkout. Now, they haven't really changed their tune as far as the primetime lineup and Fox and Friends and all these sycophants and whatnot. But I can't help but think, if Fox leaves, is there going to be just a tiny little bit of that might, maybe, perhaps someday, it's a dream? Is it a possibility? Could it ever turn out that they might turn on dear leader and his merry band of suck-ups and sociopaths? I can imagine it. I can fantasize about it. I will not expect it. I'm going to read you some more George Orwell from 1984. Pretty remarkable that this book was written between 1946 and 1949, and it feels like a documentary of the times. I feel like it's almost like Orwell was not supposed to be an instruction manual, people. It was supposed to be a warning for the ages, but nobody said it like Orwell did, and I'm going to read more from him next. George Orwell famously wrote, and this was not in 1984, it was in a piece called Homage to Catalonia. He said, "All the war propaganda, all the screaming and lies and hatred comes invariably from people who are not fighting." Isn't that the truth? Watching Donald Trump play army in this way, he's murdering people. And knowing that this guy's a silver spoon trust fund baby with 5 draft deferments, President Bone Spurs has been using the United States military like his own little sandbox, his own little military war game. It's a video game, and he's sitting there mashing the buttons like an 8-year-old. Hell, not even an 8-year-old. At least 8-year-olds know how to play. From 1984, Orwell wrote, "It was possible, no doubt, to imagine a society in which wealth in the sense of personal possessions and luxury should be evenly distributed, while power remained in the hands of a small privileged caste. But in practice, such a society could not long remain stable. For if leisure and security were enjoyed by all alike, the great mass of human beings who are normally stupefied by poverty would become literate and would learn to think for themselves. And when they had done this, they would sooner or later realize that the privileged minority had no function, and they would sweep it away. In the long run, a hierarchical society was only possible on a basis of poverty and ignorance." That's chilling, especially considering the recent report that the top 10% of Americans added $5 trillion to their wealth in the second quarter of 2025. The total wealth of that top 10%, $113 trillion. Meanwhile, the median household income right here in the U.S. is about $80,000. And I think that's pretty high for a great many people. There's a huge and widening income gap in this country. There are 2,781 billionaires in the world. And how about the dispensers of information or disinformation in this country? How many hundreds or thousands of media outlets are we looking at? Whether it's the national, state, regional, local news, online media, radio, etc. Did you know that 6 companies own 90% of the media in this country? 6 corporations manage the flow of information here in the United States. Those 6 including Comcast, Disney, Warner Brothers, Paramount, and Fox Corp. Compare that to 40 years ago when 90% of our media was owned by 50 companies. At least that was an improvement. But so much of the oligarchy is really about the elites being able to run unchecked. After all, I think many or most believe they are genuinely smarter. They deserve to be in charge. They want consumers instead of free thinkers. It's all about being a loyal party member as the poor and the relatively poor prop up the rich and the powerful for the gain and benefit of the rich and the powerful. We are all supposed to be proper party members, which finally brings me back to 1984. And another excerpt from that book. A party member is expected to have no private emotions and no respites from enthusiasm. He is supposed to live in a continuous frenzy of hatred of foreign enemies and internal traitors, triumph over victories, and self-abasement before the power and wisdom of the party. The discontents produced by his bare, unsatisfying life are deliberately turned outwards and dissipated by such devices as the 2 minutes hate. By the way, 2 minutes hate in 1984, it's exactly what you would think. It is a designated slot where all kinds of bile about all dissenters and outsiders, foreigners, others, etc., just blast through these publicly placed loudspeakers, and it is a requirement for you to subject yourself to the 2 minutes hate. And the speculations, which might possibly induce a skeptical or rebellious attitude, are killed in advance by his early acquired inner discipline. The first and simplest stage in the discipline, which can be taught even to young children, is called Newspeak, crime stop. Crime stop means the faculty of stopping short, as though by instinct at the threshold of any dangerous thought. It includes the power of not grasping analogies, of failing to perceive logical errors, of misunderstanding the simplest arguments if they are inimical to ingsoc, and of being bored or repelled by any train of thought which is capable of leading in a heretical direction. Crime stop, in short, means protective stupidity. But stupidity is not enough. On the contrary, orthodoxy in the full sense demands a control over one's own mental processes as complete as that of a contortionist over his body. Oceanic society, and Oceanic is linked with ingsoc, it's kind of the overarching Big Brother entity. Oceanic society rests ultimately on the belief that Big Brother is omnipotent and that the party is infallible. But since in reality Big Brother is not omnipotent and the party is not infallible, there is need for an unwearying moment-to-moment flexibility in the treatment of facts. The key word here is black-white. Like so many Newspeak words, this word has 2 mutually contradictory meanings. Applied to an opponent, it means the habit of impudently claiming that black is white in contradiction of the plain facts. Applied to a party member, it means a loyal willingness to say that black is white when party discipline demands this. But it means also the ability to believe that black is white, and more, to know that black is white, and to forget that one has ever believed the contrary. This demands a continuous alteration of the past, made possible by the system of thought which really embraces all the rest, and which is known in Newspeak as double think. The alteration of the past is necessary for two reasons, one of which is subsidiary and, so to speak, precautionary. The subsidiary reason is that the party member, like the proletarian, tolerates present-day conditions partly because he has no standards of comparison. He must be cut off from the past, just as he must be cut off from foreign countries because it is necessary for him to believe that he is better off than his ancestors and that the average level of material comfort is constantly rising. But by far, the more important reason for the readjustment of the past is the need to safeguard the infallibility of the party. It is not merely that speeches, statistics, and records of every kind must be constantly brought up to date, and in order to show that the predictions of the party were in all cases right, it is also that no change in doctrine or in political alignment can ever be admitted. For to change one's mind or even one's policy is a confession of weakness. If, for example, Eurasia or East Asia, whichever it may be, is the enemy today, then that country must have always been the enemy. And if the facts say otherwise, then the facts must be altered. Thus, history is continuously rewritten. This day-to-day falsification of the past carried out by the Ministry of Truth is as necessary to the stability of the regime as the work of repression and espionage carried out by the Ministry of Love. The mutability of the past is the central tenet of Ingsoc. Past events, it is argued, have no objective existence, but survive only in written records and in human memories. The past is whatever the records and the memories agree upon, and since the party is in full control of all records and in equally full control of the minds of its members, it follows that the past is whatever the party chooses to make it. It also follows that though the past is alterable, it has never been altered in any specific instance. For when it has been recreated in whatever shape is needed at the moment, then this new version is the past, and no different past can ever have existed. This holds good even when, as often happens, the same event has to be altered out of recognition several times in the course of a year. At all times, the party is in possession of absolute truth, and clearly the absolute can never have been different from what it is now. It will be seen that the control of the past depends above all on the training of memory. To make sure that all written records agree with the orthodoxy of the moment is merely a mechanical act, but it is also necessary to remember that events happened in the desired manner. And if it is necessary to rearrange one's memories or to tamper with written records, then it's necessary to forget that one has done so. The trick of doing this can be learned like any other mental technique. It is learned by the majority of party members, and certainly by all who are intelligent as well as orthodox. In old speak, it is called, quite frankly, reality control. In new speak, it is called doublethink, though doublethink comprises much else as well. I, as your host, cannot help but think about MAGA cult today, an entire demographic that does not or will not understand our history, or they've rewritten it, or they've allowed someone else to rewrite it. It's like we see a completely different country. We live in a different world, and we fashion opinions around the world we live in, whether it's rooted in reality or not. The 2 minutes hate, try 24-hour hate. Propaganda mills, right? Outlets that are funneling reasons, supposed reasons, to other and divide and inflict harm on and even destroy the other. Well, that's just hate. And there's an epidemic, a cancer of hate. So we're definitely seeing that. The party saying, don't trust your eyes and ears. Remember, Donald Trump said, what you are seeing and what you are hearing is not what's happening. Those were his words. Orwell, well, you were right, George. Unfortunately, sadly, tragically, you were kind of a prophet. I would love for so many Americans to pick up a copy of 1984 and read it cover to cover, and maybe they will feel the chill in their bones as they see just how they have been and are being manipulated. They recognize the strategy of the totalitarians, the oppressors, the oligarchs, the agents of Newspeak, and maybe they can indeed someday break free. Anyway, that is our broadcast this week. Thank you so much for allowing me to share Orwell with you and a few of my thoughts. I welcome your opinions in the comments section, and I will see you next time.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter for a complete archive of podcasts and videos, products like mugs and t-shirts featuring the Thinking Atheist logo, links to atheist pages and resources, and details on upcoming free thought events and conventions. Log on to our website, thethinkingatheist.com.